Hey grade 8s, welcome to your Friday math lesson. So for the last few days we've been working on pattern rules. So we've done two different types where you had a chart that had an input number and an output number, and there was a rule. So whatever you had to change the input number, either adding something to it, subtracting something from it, or you had a string of numbers or a line of numbers and you had to find the next three values and you had to find the pattern rule yourself. Today we're going back to those input and output charts. However, this time around we're doing something beyond just adding and subtracting. We're going to start doing a little bit of multiplication and division. So how this works, first of all we're going to do a little bit of a review, and then we're going to go into some more complicated pattern rules. So right here, we have to fill all the output numbers. Our input numbers are already given to us. We have 1, 2, and 3. The pattern rule is to add 4. So to do this, I basically just take my input number. So in this case, I have 1, and I just add 4 to it. So 1 plus 4, that equals 5. The second one, same rule, I add 4 to it, so 2 plus 4 equals 6. So my output number is 6. Next one is 3 plus 4, so 3 plus 4 equals 7. So that's our pattern rules for our simple addition. Let's do one more as practice, and then we're going to get into a couple of multiplication and division ones. So I'm just going to keep the same chart. I'm just going to erase our numbers here. So this time, instead of starting from 1, we're going to start from, let's start from 3. So we have 3, 4, and 5. The pattern rule is going to be subtract 2. So I take my input number and I subtract 2 from it. So 3 minus 2, my output is 1. Next one is I have 4, so I take 4 and I minus 2 from it, and that equals 2. Next one I have is 5, I do 5 minus 2, and that equals 3. So that's our simple input and output rules. Now let's get into doing something that requires multiplication and division. So we're going to have two versions, one where the pattern rule is given to you, and another where the pattern rule is not given to you, so you have to find it yourself. Let's start with one where the pattern rule is given to you, because that's a little bit easier to start off with. So in this case, the pattern rule will be multiply by 2. So I have my numbers here. It's going to be 4, 5, and 6. I just have to apply this pattern rule to my input numbers. So if my input number is 4, and I just have to multiply it by 2, so 4 times 2, that equals 8. My next one is 5. I just do the same thing, 5 times 2. My output is 10. Next one is 6. 6 times 2, that equals 12. Also, you'll notice that there's a bit of a pattern going on with our output numbers. They are increasing by 2 each time. That's kind of interesting, because what if I extend this? So what if I had the input of 7? I could just multiply it by 2, and that would give me my next number. So if I extended this chart and gave another row, well, I would already know what it is because I just have to use my rule. I just take my input number, which the next one would be 7, and I multiply 2 by 2, which equals 14. And it goes up from 2 by 12, so 12 plus 2 equals 14. So you'll notice sometimes that there's some patterns going on here, that as you extend the chart, you could apply the rule to any number beyond what is just on the chart. So let's say I gave you the input number of 10. Well, I'm not going to draw all the columns of the chart down to 10 because I don't have room. But I could still figure out the output number by just multiplying, by using my pattern rule. So taking 10 and multiplying by 2, which gives me 20. So my output number, if my input number is 10, would be 20. How about if there is no input number given to you, it only gives you the output number? So let's try that one out. So I'm going to put a bunch of numbers up, and we're going to try to find out what the input number would be. So remember how last time, if the input number was not given to you, you have to do the opposite. So if you had to add 4 to the input number to get the output, if you had the output number to get the input number, you'd have to minus 4. So we're going to try doing the same thing, except this time we're doing it with multiplication and division. So we still have the same pattern rule, which is multiply by 2. But our output number here is 16. And the input number here is 9, and the output number here would be 20. I need to find these missing spaces here. Let's work, well, I already know how to do my input number to get this output number. I just multiply it by 2. So 9 times 2, that equals 18. So that one's pretty easy to figure out. What if I only have the output number? Well, there's 2 strategies. If these numbers here are going in order by 1, so let's say it's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I could just plug in numbers in order. So I could do 8, 9, 10. But there's another strategy that is better to rely on because you never know if the chart is going up in order, is to do the opposite operation. So if my rule is to multiply by 2 for my input number to get my output number, I have to do the opposite operation for my output number to get my input number. So if I give the number 16, I have to do the opposite of multiplying by 2. I have to divide it. So you guys, the opposite of multiplication is division. So I divide by 2 because dividing by 2 is the opposite of multiplying by 2. So now I have to just do 16 divided by 2. You are allowed to use a calculator if you need one. So 16 divided by 2, that gives me 8. So that means my input number here is 8. How can I check to see if I'm right? I take my input number and I apply my pattern rule. 8 times 2. Does it equal 16? Yes, so I know I'm right. Let's try that again. We're going to do it with 20 this time. So we have our output number, we need to get our input number. So that means I have to do the opposite of multiplying, which is dividing, and I still use that number 2. So I just divide it by 2 instead of multiplying, because I have the output number and I need the input number. So 20 divided by 2, that equals 10. That means my input number is 10. How can I check to see if I'm right? I do 10 times 2. 10 times 2 equals 20. So there it is. That's how you apply your pattern rule if you only have an output number and you need to figure out the input number. What if you are not given the pattern rule? You're just given the numbers themselves and you have to find the pattern rule yourself. Well, let's try that one out. So I'm going to put some numbers down for us, and we need to figure out the pattern rule together. So pattern rule is going to be left blank, and I'm going to put some numbers in. Let me try to erase this as best as possible. Okay, so the first row we're going to get an input and output number. It's going to be, our input number is 3, the output is going to be 9. This number here will be 12, and this number here will be 5. We don't know what the pattern rule is. So the only way we can figure out the pattern rule is we have to look at this row here where both numbers are given to us. That's how we're going to figure out what the pattern rule would be. How can I get from 3 to 9? Well, I have two options. Either I can add something to 3 to get to 9, or I can multiply something by 3 to get to 9. Let's try adding it for the first time around. So what do I have to add to 3 to get to 9? I just need to add 6. So 3 plus 6 equals 9. If it's adding 6 and I have my output number is 12. So I just need to do the opposite operation. So if I think my pattern rule is adding 6, let's try doing the opposite. So I do 12 minus 6 to get my input number, which equals 6. That doesn't make a lot of sense. How can my pattern here be going up by 3, up to 6, but then down to 5? That doesn't make sense because all our charts have shown that these numbers go up in order. So I don't think it can be adding in this case. Let's try multiplying this time around, because that adding doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So I have to do something to 3 to get to 9. So I know it can't be adding because it didn't work. So we have to do 3 times something equals 9. How can I figure out what I need to do? I can either review my 3 times table, so I can do, does 3 times 1 give me 9? Nope. 3 times 2? Nope. 3 times 3? Oh, that works. So I can either review my times tables, or I do the opposite operation, which is 9, and then I just divide it by 3. And that will give me what I need to times by it. So if I did 9 divided by 3, that equals 3. And that will give me what I need to multiply my number by. Either way will work. So from input to output, I did multiplying. So I need to find this input number if my output number is given to me. So what I do is I do 12. If I was multiplying it by 3, I need to divide because I'm doing the opposite operation. So 12 divided by 3, that gives me 4. So let's try 4. I think that works a lot better because look, my numbers here on the input chart go 3, 4, 5. That makes a lot of sense. So I think I figured out what my pattern rule is. It is multiply by 3. So that's my pattern rule. Let's apply that pattern rule to 5. So I have to do 5 times 3, 5 times 3, that equals 15. Another thing is you'll see on this column, these numbers here, 3, 12, 15, they're going up by 3. That's how you know you've also gotten a good pattern, is because these numbers here go up by the same amount each time, and these numbers here go go up or down by the same amount each time. So there we go. Let's try a pattern rule where we are given division instead. So let's just draw a new chart instead of using this one all the time. So I have 1, 2, 3, let's do 4 rows. And our pattern rule we'll put down here. And input and output. All right, so let's do one where the pattern rule is to divide by 2. So every number that we get in the input, we have to divide by 2. So let's start with a bigger number. Let's go with our input number. Let's start with 16. Let's start with something different. Let's do 10, 12, that'll be 7, and 8. Okay, so we need to figure out the missing spots of this chart. Well, if our pattern rule is divided by 2, all I have to do is take this pattern rule and apply it to my input numbers. So all I have to do is 10 divided by 2, that gives me 5. 12 divided by 2, that gives me 6. Oh, look, I have all my output numbers now. And you see how they all go up by the same amount, 5, 6, 7, 8. That looks like it works really nicely. Now, I have to find my input numbers here. Well, in order to do that, I have to take my output number and I have to do the opposite operation. If my operation was to divide by 2 for my input number, I have to do the opposite, which in this case is multiplying it by 2. So I have to do 7 and I multiply it by 2. 7 times 2, that equals 14. So my pattern rule, so my number here is 14. Now we have 8, and I have to do the opposite operation of division, which is multiplication, so times it by 2, which equals 16. And that's my input number. And then I can see here that these are going up by 2, so 10, 12, 14, 16. They're all going up by the same amount. These are all going up by the same amount. That pattern seems to work really well. So that's essentially what your homework is going to be based off of. You're going to get a bunch of the charts. Either you have to find the pattern rule and fill in the rest of the blanks, or the pattern rule is given to you and you fill in the rest of the blanks. So that's what we're going to be working on today. The multiplication and division should be relatively simple, so it'll be like multiplication by 2s and 3s and division by 2s or 3s. And there shouldn't be any decimals at all. And that's what we're working on today. So that's your Friday math lesson. The other thing I have for you guys this weekend is a little bit of an assignment, which is basically give yourself a half an hour or an hour sometime this weekend to do something that you have been wanting to do during quarantine, but you haven't gotten around to. Is it watching a movie that you've really been wanting to watch for a while, but you just haven't gotten around to it? Is it reading a little bit of a book that you've been wanting to do? Or is it starting up a new hobby that you've been meaning to try? That's your mission for this time around, is spend some time to do some self-care for yourselves. Otherwise, have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you on Monday.